The next question is, if our brain are quantum machines or quantum computers, can we assume our process of thinking is nothing but a network of entanglement and wormhole defying space-time order to travel to the past, basically memories, or move forward in future, which basically are thoughts, right? Hi everyone. I think the last few years has been an exciting time for physics. Again, like back in the 20s, there was quantum mechanics, and all sorts of discoveries happened back then. And when you look at the few discoveries has happened in the last few years, or basically the announcements, it seems that we are again at the beginning of a very exciting time for physics. And actually, yesterday I was watching some of the news, and this news came up from Nature magazine regarding to forming wormholes in a quantum computer at the Google. And to me, this seems like such exciting news. And I think compared to like what was happening last 20-30 years in physics, these news coming out describing of the new quantum information theories, it seems like we are again having a very exciting time ahead of us, full of discoveries and very interesting conversation, and basically a new perception of how the reality is. I'm just gonna start talking about what was happened yesterday. So basically, I wrote a few notes here. It just helped me to be more focused. There was a paper published, and at the same time a YouTube video came out as well, talking about the forming a wormhole dynamics in the quantum process by Daniel Jeffreys and other authors. And well, it's fairly technical, but when I looked at the video, it seems that what they describe comes back to the idea of quantum mechanics as well as the idea of the wormholes. So the idea is that this group of researchers at Google, they basically form a black hole in a quantum computer, and that quantum computer allowed an entanglement of data, basically bypassing from one location to another location. Now the interesting part of this one is basically is very experimental process. It's not just a theory. The theory existed since 1935. The idea of black holes, entanglement, that both came out in 1935. But the fact that they would manage to form a wormhole in the quantum computer brings us to a very interesting concepts of the just teleporting information, or basically we're not talking about teleporting people. Is not at this point probably is not possible, but we can teleport information. So I'm just gonna start talking about a few of these notes I took from these papers. Basically, the Einstein-Rosen predicted basically a connection between space-time, and in that regard, basically, if you have two space-time locality, you can theoretically travel between them by kind of defying the space-time using bridges. That's what they call it in that paper, but these days we call it basically wormholes. And at the same time, the same year, Einstein, Podolsky, and Rosen published another paper talking about the spooky action in distance, which basically is a quantum entanglement. And there are a lot of videos on that. I encourage you guys to go watch that one on your time. This is going to be a short video. So basically, these two papers calling ER versus EPR. The first one, ER, described the formation of bridges, which we call them wormhole these days, and also the other one talks about the entanglement, quantum entanglement. Now, the second paper was actually written as an attack to quantum mechanics, that quantum mechanics is incomplete, and therefore, it is not a perfect theory, and basically entanglement is not a real thing. Moving forward, last year there was the Nobel Prize in Physics 2022, which was given to three physicists: Alan Aspect, John Clauser, and Anton Zillinger. Their work was basically experimentally proving that quantum entanglement is possible, and what they did some entanglement with atoms and photons, and they kind of show that experimentally quantum teleportation is possible. Now, having said that, this has been done recently. There are other works that kind of show the same evidence, but the Nobel Prize goes to them because they've been trying to prove this one since like 1960s and 1970s. Anyhow, so these three physicists proven that teleportation is possible, but then when you look at the kind of the order of events that has happened last few years, if you go back 2 years before Nobel Prize 2022 in the year 2020, Roger Penrose is actually won the Nobel Prize for his work on black holes. Now, he actually kind of showed that black hole formation is a possibility, and he got the Nobel Prize for that. But besides that, I mean, let's see what we have here. We have wormholes, we have black holes, we have quantum information, we have entanglement. But one thing that is to me is very amazing is that Roger Penrose I believe it was 1989, he wrote a book named The Emperor's New Mind. And in that book, he talked about something like twisted theory, and then he talked about the quantum consciousness. Now, back then, this idea hasn't been picked up because it involves a lot of assumptions and a lot of things that kind of hard to prove. But what was interesting about it is that Penrose and Hameroff theory talks about the formation of microtubes that allows quantum process to form. Okay, so this becomes more interesting when you go back a few years later. We have this conversation about forming wormholes in a quantum computer. Okay, so having said that, as I mentioned last in my video, there was a paper in Nature magazine just came on 30th November 2022, just 2 days ago, and then they talk about the wormhole dynamics and quantum process that form. You guys can find it. I'll probably put a link to that in this video. And this basically, to me, is very amazing time. You get all of these kind of relatively random events between entanglement and proving it's possible, and then you talk about the black holes that they're formable, and then you talk about wormholes, and now we get this discovery, which basically is the indicator that wormholes are potentially possible in a quantum computer. Okay, now when we go back a little bit, or let's say we just go around the idea and then look at other concepts that came out years ago, and people may have forgotten about it, or they're still a part of conversation in physics. There are a few ideas that I want to discuss, but before I do that, I want to talk about the idea of the idea of Alan Turing machine or universal computer, that these computers are capable of computing any function as long as it's done by a Turing computer. Okay, now So why I'm talking about these things? It all comes back to basically the idea of combining all of these concepts together. And I'm sure there are a lot of people working on already. What we get from the news or the journals is basically what has happened in the past. I'm sure there are some ongoing work on that. But what was I thinking is, when I saw that video, I thought of something, and it's not me just saying that, because if you read the Roger Penrose's book, he discussed similar idea to what the consciousness is and what how it's related to quantum. And unfortunately, this kind of conversation always fall into somehow a metaphysics concept sometimes, and it can be easily drifted to just a philosophy and metaphysics, which is their own realm. They are very interesting concepts. But what I was thinking about, the order of events that came forward last few years and publicly been put forward and kind of basically made the news, is that the idea of how this would relate to kind of like a artificial intelligence or AI, or the other things we can think of, like if you really want to have a kind of general AI, the AI that thinks independently like humans do. We basically have to model the process of thinking and what the thought is and so on and so forth. So on the human perspective, when I saw the video, or I actually wrote a comment, and I'm going to read that for you guys, is that I actually mentioned the next question is, if our brain are quantum machines or quantum computers, can we assume our process of thinking is nothing but a network of entanglement and wormhole defying space-time order to travel to the past, basically memories, or move forward in future, which basically are thoughts, right? And I don't know. I mean, it's just something that is very hard to prove, probably, but I think it had value to mention that. I'm sure there are a lot of other people thinking about that. And one thing I actually read a few years ago was, what is a deja vu, for example, right? So is a deja vu, what some layman concept is like, well, when your mind can travel faster than speed of light, then basically time would be meaningless to that. So you can go to the future and get the idea of what's something happened in the future. And if you really believe in the block universe kind of concept, well, that makes sense. I'm not saying it's true, but anyways, in that case, you can basically go see something that already seen, deja vu, right? And then bring it back next time. So now, but that's something aside. But I think the idea of, if we can model thinking based on the entanglement, and basically using the wormhole idea, and then kind of creating a general intelligence based on multi-dimensional processes of entanglements, or I call it a network of entanglements. Maybe there would be some way we can kind of talk about what is really what is a thought, or what is a real general AI, something that can think like a human being. And maybe our brain is actually a quantum machine in many ways. When you think about it, it is not really a silicon type of machine. It's basically it function differently. And the concepts of Alan Turing, that if we can create a wormhole in a quantum computer, why not we would not be able to create in our thoughts, in our brain? So I thought it interesting, and let me know what you guys think. It's just it's just some ideas. All right, thank you.